All right. Welcome back to the Financial Beast podcast. I'm your host, Eric Miller, your BFFF, your best financial friend forever. And we're actually going to do something a little bit different today because we used to do something called Between Two Erics.
Yep.
Back in
a
the
bit
day.
of a blast from the past, if you will.
And you know what? I think we just decided that we're going to rekindle that because it was a whole heck of a lot of fun. And what I mean by that is, in our firm, we have multiple financial advisors that work with our clients. And of course, one of the advisors that I've had that has been with me the longest, Mr. Eric Gersh. And so we're just going to take topics that we see in working with healthcare owners, as it relates to, your finances, your practice, building value, investing, debt, and just working with your financial team. And we're going to just tackle topics and talk about them and see if we can entertain and inform and make sure that you guys don't do things that are harmful to your financial situation. There you go. How's that for an intro?
That was beautiful.
Good. Yeah, that was pretty good. That's not my first time. So we said that we were going to talk about today the service model, right? In some respects.
Talk about just the financial industry as a whole and how the service model traditionally works.
So let's start with that, the financial industry as a whole and the service model. Your background was where? Lincoln?
You could say that. A large financial company.
Oh, sorry. We can't say that out loud, can we? all 10 people are going to watch this episode, right? So, all right. You work for a large financial institution.
Yes.
What was the service model that most of your advisors, because you wrote plans back then, right?
Yeah. So my job at the time, I worked in like an internal financial planning department, and basically advisors from across the country would contact our department and pay us a flat fee to write the financial plans for their clients. So they would send all the data in, send in a check, we would write the plan, email it over to them, and then they would go and deliver it to the client. So it's kind of like a pay for back office, if you will. Mm-hmm. Now, every advisor at this company ran essentially their own business. They were all 1099 contractors. They weren't actual employees of the company. So everybody did it a bit different. But by and large, I would say the average advisor was presenting a quick and short plan that the clear-cut reason was to gather assets and nothing else. I mean, it was predominantly an investment plan was really what it was. Yep. There wasn't, anything about taxes in there or estate planning. We didn't do any of that. It was just investments predominantly.
So talk about what it was. I mean, what was it? It was
taking account statements. We had this program that we would type all the holdings into. So what stocks they had, it would spit out this big report of, okay, you're this risky and you need to be that risky given your age and your timeline. Mm-hmm. And then we had another program that we would input like their income, their age, their expected Social Security payment, just a whole bunch of general financial things. And it would spit out a 30-year forecast of their financial picture. Now, I, even from day one, when I was brand new out of college, I knew forecasting 30 years out is next to impossible, right? It's like trying to forecast the weather 30 years from now. You can't rely on all my investments are going to grow at 6% every single year. My salary is going to grow at 3% every single year. And it's going to be this perfect cookie cutter scenario where 3 decades from now, I'm just rich because everything grows.
And yet, isn't most of the software set up to do that exact same thing? Put in the variables would be how much money that you make, assuming that you make the same amount of money, maybe a small increase. that you're going to contribute basically the same amount every single year for this many years, and you're going to earn 6% on that money.
Yep.
And that will give you the probability of how much money that you're going to have.
Yeah, basically that was basically it. That was our financial plan. So advisors would go, they'd present it to the client, and they would gather the assets that they could. And that our relationship kind of began and ended right there. But the advisors, because not only were we were an internal department, but we had a bunch of advisors in our office as well. So I got to see how at least advisors in our office functioned. But most of them that, they would do the plan, they would do the delivery, gather the assets, and then they would meet with the client once every 6 months to a year, review performance, talk about, I think we should move you from Home Depot to Lowe's or whatever, and send them on their way and call them again in 9 months to schedule. I don't know.
So the purpose of the meeting was simply to do a performance review.
For the most part, yep.
And look at their investments.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it.
Yeah. That was the bulk of meetings for sure.
What percentage of advisors out there do you think are doing that model?
90.
90?
90%. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
Yeah.
So 90% of advisors their system, quote unquote, is to do portfolio reviews. Now, can I say is it valuable to do some forecasting to know how much based upon what you're putting away right now, what you could expect to have? Yeah.
I agree. Value in it.
Yeah, I agree. But, okay. So we're 90% of advisors are using that particular service model.
Yeah. They review investments, review life insurance, talk about growth rates, and that's about it.
Yeah. That's scary.
Yeah, that's, as we know, that's where their bread and butter is, but it's not, while there's certainly a place, right? If you're worth $30 million, if you've got $30 million in an investment account, right?
Mm-hmm.
Meeting and talking about the performance of it and the efficiency of it and the holdings of it is certainly valuable.
Yeah.
But if you've got $50,000 or $100,000 in an IRA, how much value am I really giving the client if that's all I do, right? Whether they earn 8% this year or 7.5, yeah, it's a $500 difference, but it's not like, oh, you can retire at 55 versus 70.
What was the compensation model for most of the advisors?
Oh, it was pure commissions plus commissions on insurance products, plus money management fees, and planning fees.
So they did charge for a plan, for a quote unquote plan.
Yeah, they would basically charge, I don't know, say they charged $5,000. They would pay us, I don't know, $2,000 or $3,000, and they would keep the difference between the two.
Okay. So what did you think when you started working here? That's a stark difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you were crazy.
Me too.
Honestly.
Yeah.
I was like, number one, I had never seen advisors bill clients monthly for peer advice. I thought that was wild. And then I thought the frequency, of course, that you were meeting with clients, like, what the heck do you talk about? How do you meet with them that much? So it was eye-opening.
Yeah. And then what did you find out when you started meeting with clients?
I found out that there's never a shortage of things to talk about with business owners. And when you're not focused just on their investment performance and selling more life insurance, there's endless discussions when it comes to how they can make their estate planning more efficient, or little things they can do to save on taxes. It might save them $1,000 a year, right? It's not night and day difference, but you do that over a 15, 20 year timeline, that those little things add up. $1,000 here in tax savings, $1,000 here in interest savings because you accelerated your debt. You piece all these little things together, and suddenly it becomes tens of thousands a year.
Yeah. And okay, I want to talk about the frequency of meetings.
Yeah, frequency. Because, so yeah, I mean, as our clients know, I mean, we, of course, when you're a brand new client, right, we're meeting with you every week or two, pending your schedule. But once you're an established, ongoing client of our firm, you are traditionally meeting with us every, 6 to 8 weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, every month and a half to 2 months.
And if you want to know why we kind of choose that time frame, because I figured early on that was about the length of time that I could allow people to not talk with an advisor and not get into some stupid trouble at that point.
Yeah, so I find that it's enough time, right? Like if you talk to your clients every 3 weeks, it gets to the point after a number of months or years where it's like, all right, what are we really getting on the phone for? Nothing's changed, right?
Right.
But a month and a half, 2 months, a lot changes, especially inside of their business, right? They might have had a doctor who left, or a new doctor that they want to bring on, and they want to talk about a appropriate compensation plan. They might need a new car. They, whatever it is, life goes on in those 45 to 60 days. And it's enough time for there to be enough life to justify a meeting where you can deliver value as an advisor. And that doesn't mean that every meeting is, breathtaking new advice that is just going to change the world. Some meetings are very simple. How is the practice doing? What's your production? Are we hitting your targets? It's nothing groundbreaking by any stretch, but other meetings are huge. I mean, I've had meetings where, there's this tax credit that you can take, and they never had heard of it, and it ended up being 6 figures,
Yeah.
I would love to get on the phone and deliver 6 figures of value every single call. Would love to, but it's not,
Yeah, it's not going to happen. But, to your point, there isn't we do have an agenda of things that because there are there's some core things that, like every healthcare owner needs to be doing every month.
Yeah. And every meeting, we're going to check in on the basics. Every meeting, we're going to ask about your production. We're going to ask about your debt. We're going to ask about your savings.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to happen every single meeting.
Yeah. And we're going to, and we have a system where we show you how to, expense profits out of the business and, build personal wealth. And, we track that so that, we know that it's happening. And, sometimes the things come up.
Yeah. I get all the time. I get emails, texts, phone calls almost daily from clients that are like, hey, just got a super quick question. Do you have 30 seconds or can you just respond to this text?
Yeah.
It's always something.
Like, do you have an example of okay. So we've kind of established that the traditional financial advisor out there, and I'm talking like your Merrill Lynch guys, your Edward Jones guys, your Raymond James, they're not ill-intentioned people, but their focus is on, your portfolios and your investments and such. Right. But isn't most of the value that is created by an owner as far as their net worth, it's in different areas, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is the habits of, putting the practice in getting it ramped up and more valuable. It is, the expansion of that. It is, like I said before, taking your profits out so you can accelerate retirement. I do want to talk about that because I think we do that better than anybody else. Show people how to accelerate retirement more so, because again, if we're looking at like the traditional advisor, what have you seen? Like, what are the investment buckets that most of these traditional advisors are telling people to do?
401k.
Yeah.
Brokerage account.
Yeah.
Life insurance policy.
I wouldn't even say most of them are doing that, but I think you're right on the 401k qualified plans as a bucket, yep. Right? Social Security.
Oh yeah. Social Security.
Yeah. And the sale of their practice. That's pretty much it. Right?
I mean, I know back at my old job, we worked with a lot of business owners, not necessarily practice owners, but business owners. And the business was at best a marginal piece of the pie. It was kind of like, oh yeah, we know you have this asset over here, but let's keep our attention over here.
So the advisors had no idea about the business.
Nothing. I don't know if I'd say they had no idea, but they didn't have any way to tie it into the financial plan for the most part.
For the household, right? They just said, hey, that's your thing. Kind of do whatever it is that you're going to do with it.
When you're ready to sell, we'll see what you get for it, and then we'll get that money allocated.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
But there was no like, okay, here's how we're going to use the business to enrich your household. Here, even, I know like what we do, like here's an example of what other, say, veterinarians of your size are selling for. No, that doesn't mean I know exactly what your practice is worth, but I can make a pretty educated guess.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys weren't doing that. They were just kind of like, tell me what it's worth. Tell me what you sell it for. And we'll give you, some recommendations.
Yeah. So there's, and you probably do the same thing even with the person's real estate too. I mean, when I say here's the funny thing. You look at a advisor, right? And what's the first thing that most people ask that advisor as far as like, well, like, give me some credentials, right? Or even if you ask other advisors, I think most of them are going to say, well, how much in assets under management do you have?
Yep.
Right. And, I look at that and I'm like, and, we have, a couple $100 million when you add up all of the investments and insurance policies and annuities and all that we have. Right.
Yeah.
And, but I look at that, I'm like, but you know what? I mean, do you give people advice on their real estate? Like how much they're charging, getting some tax benefits from it. We give advice on how to improve the value of the business. I mean, we're showing people how to better improve their entirety of their investment portfolio, not just
and that's the difference is we're looking at their real estate and their business as a investment, where these advisors are looking at them as a place you live and the place that you go to work.
Yeah. But there's no advice on how to improve the value of those things.
No.
Like most people aren't giving advice on how do I improve the value of those particular investments?
No.
And I think that's a huge mistake, because I could say, based upon, like some of the things that we look at and the advice that we give and things that we do, like I got all of like, I have your practice under advisement because I'm responsible for like making sure that you're not neglecting this thing. You're not treating it like a job that you are. And I'm not there running it for you. I'm not operating it for you or anything like that. But
of course,
what are some things that, you guys do when you're meeting with clients to make sure they're paying attention to their business?
Yeah. So like I said, to answer your question, like I said, we of course are always tracking their production and are they hitting their targets. We're also always talking about expansion and what's your next goal, right?
Yep.
Because with any business, for the most part, it's not like, oh, I grew to $3 million, I've made it. No, when you get to 3, you want to get to 3.5. When you get to 3.5, you want to get to 4. And that game, I guess, continues until the day that you sell or retire. There's never like we're good, we'll just coast.
Yeah, because you realize really early on that there's no going sideways.
There's no going sideways. And then with that, I mean, the other thing I would say that's very unique about what we do is because we only work with a couple industries, we know, I'm not a business consultant, but we know about your industry. Mm-hmm. We know what your expenses should be. Like when I'm talking to a vet or a dentist, I know what percent staff payroll should be of their gross, what percent utilities should be of their gross, rent, cost of goods sold, so on and so forth. So that's something, especially right now in the beginning of the year, it's something that I'm reviewing with most every client is, so let's take a look at 23. Let's look at your expenses. Great. This year, your goal is, your cost of goods sold is a little high. Let's try to get it down 2% this year. Right.
Yeah.
I'm not doing your ordering. I'm not going to get your cost of goods sold down, but I'm the one here who's educating you on the fact that A, it's high, and B, then you can handle your ordering person or your office manager and give them guidelines to get it down.
Yeah.
But had we never had that conversation, you would have never known it was high in the first place. So you would have just kept doing the same thing.
It would have just kept for the entirety of the year. It would have just been at 2% or at 3% or whatever it is. And then all of a sudden, like, where's my profit at? I don't have enough profit in here. And we're like, okay. So you got to pay attention to these things. And, you guys go over profit and loss statements pretty regularly with owners.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yep.
That's unheard of that a financial advisor would do that. I've never heard of financial advisors going over profit and loss statements of their clients' businesses ever. No. Never seen that. I'm sure some of them do.
Oh yeah, but it's not the industry norm by any stretch.
It's not an industry. That is not an expectation.
No.
That you should have if you're working with a financial advisor. That is, I think you're only going to get that if you work with someone that understands your industry. That is 100%.
Of course. Otherwise they're not going to know what they're looking at.
Yeah, that's 100%. Hey, give me like a, I don't know, example of where frequency of meetings stopped something bad from happening. Do you have anything off the top of your head? I kind of threw that one at you. I'm trying to think of like if there's a, where if you didn't have regular calls, you kind of prevent.
I got a good one.
Yeah, tell me.
I have a client who had gone to some, I don't know if it's like a trade show or, I don't know. He'd gone to some industry show.
Yeah.
And at this industry show, there was this speaker who told all these people the method to get rich, right? Mm-hmm. And this was during 2021, 2022, when interest rates were dramatically low. And basically, the whole setup was you get a life insurance policy, then you get a line of credit. You pull out of the line of credit, put into the life. Now the life is worth more, so the line of credit goes up. Take more out, boom, 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 boom. Infinite wealth, right?
Okay.
Because as long as the life insurance policy is earning an average of, I don't know, say 5%, that's probably pretty fair. And your line of credit is 2%, 3%, that works great, right? Infinite wealth. That easy.
And by the way, there's nothing wrong with funding a cash value life insurance. I think the way that you're talking about it, though, is
this is a little different.
Is leveraging something else to fund the policy,
taking on infinite debt to fund it.
Yeah. Okay, keep going. Different. Yeah, it is.
So yeah, I mean, he was sold on it. He was ready to move forward, and I pointed out the fact that, you know, the whole house of cards is going to come crashing down when interest rates go up.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened within 2 years? That line of credit today,
oh my God,
would be probably 9-10%. And his policy would still be earning probably an average of 4 to 6. And he'd be underwater. And
he'd have to be out of pocket to pay the interest on the line of credit, wouldn't he?
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
It would have been a mess. And whoever fell for it is probably paying dearly for it right now.
Yeah. Did they ever come back and say, "Hey, Eric, thanks for not letting me do
just
that"?
This week we were talking about it. That's why it popped in my head when you asked me that question. I was talking to them just this week, and it was like, yeah, I'm glad you talked us out of that one.
Yeah. So that only happens with frequency of contact.
No, if I talked to them once a year, they probably would have, you know, unless luck hit and my annual meeting was right then, they would have done it. So frequency of meetings saved them probably tens of thousands of dollars in interest.
Yep. The other good story that you have on understanding like the full cycle of someone and their business and kind of helping them going. Yeah, because look, we do help people with as they're exiting out, right? I mean, we do forecasting of income streams. We do what else do we do?
Investment
recommendations of where they should allocate their money. Obviously making sure they're not going to take a big lump sum of money and just throw it into something that, could, has a lot of volatility to it. But their also debt. Their debt,
what
but also
to pay, what not to pay.
Yeah. And the deal structure itself. I mean, I'm not a professional transition broker.
Yeah, we're not M&A guys.
Yeah. But I think we've seen enough deals to know okay, this is, pretty standard and this isn't, right?
Yep.
So tell that story of what you did for that one client and what it would have turned out to if they didn't do that.
Yeah. So I had a client selling his practice, mm-hmm. and it was like first quarter of a new year. And that first quarter had just ended up, and he had shown growth over the previous year. Now the offer was based on the previous year.
Yeah.
So in the growth that he showed was, I don't remember, but like 15%. I mean, it was a notable amount of growth. It's not like it was 1.5% growth.
Yeah.
So anyways, I mentioned to him, hey, if you could get the buyer to factor in the growth that you've seen over the last 90 days, that may change your dollar amount. And he took it to his attorney, and his attorney was, of course, like, well, you don't really want to rock the boat, and you did have good growth, but we don't know. It might hurt you. I don't know how, but thankfully this guy did what, in the back of his mind, he knew. He was like, I'm going to listen to Eric on this, because he seems like he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And he went to the buyer himself and talked with them about the growth he had, and they ended up giving him another $500,000 of cash for a 5-minute conversation on his numbers. That was it. That was it.
Just asked.
Yeah.
Because someone was there to make sure that they had another set of eyeballs on the deal and that understood how these deals work.
The worst they can say is no, right?
Yeah.
They want to buy your business clearly, or they wouldn't be making this multi-million-dollar offer to begin with. So it's not like they're going to say, "Oh, sorry, you grew over the last quarter. We're going to pull our deal." No.
Yeah. And it's not like you're going to offend these corporate groups by asking for more money. I mean, these guys are professional sharks.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like, that attorney saying, well, you're going to upset the deal. You're going to rock the deal. You're going to do all these things was like, come on. I mean, these are big boys. So, they're used to this kind of thing. That's amazing. I mean, that to me is like,
that's one of my favorite stories of my whole career.
Yeah, no, that is a great story. So, I think, kind of to wrap up, you do have a choice. I mean, you do have, traditional advisors out there, their model, which is basically just retirement planning for the most part. I mean, some give you some guidance on, debt and credit and, estate planning.
Yeah. There's certainly guys out there that do a great job. There's certainly guys out there that pay attention to estate planning or taxes. It's just not the norm.
Right. And, when you're in an industry like, most of the healthcare owners are, having someone that I think understands the business side of it, I think is just paramount, because these are all these little things that are outside of just looking at, hey, what's the performance of my investment account? Yep. Just like you said, are going to add a tremendous amount of value to someone. I mean, you gave an example where you got someone an extra $500,000. Yeah. How much was that worth?
500,000.
Yeah, it was definitely worth 500,000. So, all right, cool. All right, brother. Thanks, man. We'll pick a new topic, but I think that was good just to get back in the groove of things between two Erics.
Absolutely.
So we will.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you guys back on with another episode of Between Two Erics. I think we're gonna do one next week too.
Yep, we'll be back.
All right, take care of.